But Joe Rogan firmly sees that, and people who agree with that, as, oh, whoa, this is the left, they've gone too crazy, you know? I mean, it's weird. It's this whole trans agenda. If you step out of line, if you happen to speak out in turn, if you don't say exactly what you're supposed to say, if you don't always use the proper pronouns, if you don't do this, if you don't agree that it's totally okay to give children gender-affirming care, even though we all know that is child abuse. See, and I don't agree with that. They've gone too far. So because of that, because they've gone too PC, I'm going to then tell my audience of 11 million people to vote for MAGA, to vote for the party that is effectively trying to legislate women's bodies and people who give birth, make sure that almost half the population doesn't have bodily autonomy, that is completely on board with actual censorship. We're talking about the censorship of books in libraries and schools, and making sure that those books are no longer available for people to learn from because they might have some scary ideas, you know, 1984 Ministry of Truth, yeah, that kind of stuff. Oh, and Joe Rogan says everyone should vote Republican.
From the post-millennial, vote Republican. Joe Rogan on how Americans can protect your freedom. Well, everybody knows that Dr. Joe Rogan is who you go to for your political and medical advice.
I don't recognize the two guests. Is this the artist? I don't think it's the artist guy. It doesn't look like him. But right away, it's just like, oh, here we go, Tim.
Advice. I'm joking, by the way. Calm down, YouTube. And here's what happened. Joe Rogan and Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers got into the harms of COVID policies in a recent episode of The Experience, and Rogan took the opportunity to blast Democrats and give a boost to Republicans. Vote Republican, he said in response to Rodgers' question about what Americans should do about it. Quote, no one who was alive today ever experienced a true pandemic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know if everyone saw this. Well, first, if you want the background, the right is just having the time of their lives because of Sam Hyde. Sam Hyde is this like far-right troll who had a TV show, $1 Million Stream. So then he went back to doing a lot of internet stuff, and then he started trying to create his like alt-right troll network. But I mean, deeply, you know, intensely transphobic, homophobic, anti-Muslim, anti-black, anti-Jewish, really anti-Semitic, right? So that's who he is. But he's become one of the YouTube boxers now. He's in a boxing match, and then right at the very end of the boxing match, his name's the Candyman, so he plays like an Irish character. He's like, oh, so who's going to be your next opponent? And so he challenges Hassan Piker. But he does it in just like the most memeable way possible, like the memes catching wildfire, because it's always like, Hassan Piker, I'm coming to kill you. And then it's like, you mean in the ring, right? No, in your home. I'm going to come to your house in LA and I'm going to put on your makeup and I'm going to wear your dresses and I'm going to wear your skin like the Irish used to do back in the day. Yeah, I'm coming to your little house to kill you. And so, like, obviously the right was like, oh my God, this is the greatest day of my life. I can't believe this is happening. Why won't Hassan address this? Why won't he acknowledge this? Blah. And they got to the point where Tim Pool's like, these leftists really want to enter the arena of violence. That is until Sam Hyde calls them out. Now, I don't know what you mean by enter the arena of violence. If you're referencing the fact that like every single right-wing grifter at one point or another has done the left never wants to debate. They're too scared. They're too scared. And then every time that happens, it's like, yeah, every single one of us will debate you. I'd love to. I'd love to have an opportunity to talk to you, Tim. And then it's like, well, you're not willing to like come to my house directly. You just want to do it through Zoom calls, so that doesn't really count. So clearly this person's afraid. And why won't you just sit inside the room with me? Because then you could really like. It's obviously because Tim Pool wants this weird home field advantage where he's got a room full of two other people, one of them with a computer who can fact check and try to catch up with everything these little rascally lefties are saying. And also, it's harder to be mad at someone in person than it is on the internet. That part is also true. That entire strange phenomenon. But this next one, enter the arena of violence, as if like leftists have been calling to the right to punch them in the face in a public forum. Like this whole YouTubers boxing each other thing, I thought it started out not from politics, but just from an entertainment perspective, where like iDubbbz and all these other people were like, it would be really funny if we just had famous YouTubers or even old YouTubers who aren't as famous just beat the shit out of each other. That'll be entertainment. And they put it off, and then that's what's kind of going on. It's never been that the left has been like, I challenge every single fucking right-winger to a fight. And by the way, if Hassan Piker had been saying for a long time, Sam Hyde is a fucking, he's a coward, Sam Hyde fucking is just a fucking shrunken testicle. He just shrinks at the first notice. He's not afraid of me. I would take him on any day. And then Sam Hyde right afterwards was like, I'm coming to kill you. Let's box. And then Hassan was like, oh, no, I don't want to. That's very, very different than just random people being like, I'm coming to kill you. And then everyone being like, oh shit. Oh, whoa, what's he gonna do? I was like, a fight, and I'm a fan of boxing, of MMA, of like actual licensed fighting. A fight has to be a consensual agreement between two individuals who are going to then enter the ring and beat each other up. It's not you just chasing people down and being like, fight me, bro, fight me, bro. Like, this is the same thing. This is like the debate me, bro, but now it's with fighting, you know? But this one actually gets sillier because guess what, everybody? We have an announcement to make. A challenge has been announced. Yes, that's right. Tim Pool, you have been challenged by none other than Jack Saint. Tim Pool, I would like to challenge you to a physical fight. It's happened, everybody. Jack Saint, who retired for more than a year from being a YouTube video essayist, talking about movies, going by he, they pronouns, has decided to challenge Tim Pool in the octagon or the ring. We're not sure. It's very ambiguous, and he hasn't released any other statements at this point, but it's still part of lore now. So, Tim, will you answer the call? The Jack Saint has asked, will you be a saint or a sinner, Tim? In the ring or octagon? I haven't fully decided. Maybe a mud pit, or some sand. I don't know what they're gonna do. If it's Muay Thai or some other stuff, but it's a challenge, nonetheless. Tim Pool, coming to kill you. In Roblox. But anyways, I don't think the solution to every single one of these is just going to be for right-wingers and left-wingers to start punching each other in the face, especially media personalities. Just gonna throw it out there. I mean, we saw what happened with you know, Haas, Infrared Haas, and Dylan Burns, where he was like, I challenge you to a fight, and he's like, okay, and he's like, well, I don't want to really do this. I didn't know that you used to box. And it's like, why should that matter? Okay. But yeah. And then he's like, well, maybe I'll just meet you in an alley somewhere. Yeah, that's how we'll do this. I was like, this shit is very high school. My dudes, I feel like this is where this is all headed, you know? It's just become this whole thing. And the debate me bro has now upgraded to punch me bro. It's like the next phase. Like, I'm memeing with the whole Jack Saint Tim Pool stuff. I don't think the solution for right wing and left wing creators is to start just fucking throwing fists at each other.
And I'm hoping that now that this is over, people are going to, you know, recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it. So what do you tell those people? Rogers said. Vote Republican, Rogan said. Rogers chuckled. That's what a lot of them are going to do anyway. Wow. More than 1 million people transferred over to the Republican Party, I think, in 2021 alone. But, you know, you look at guys like Ron DeSantis, who kept Florida open and had some pretty reasonable policies in terms of, like, what to do about COVID. And, you know, he mapped it out on television, full stop. DeSantis did not keep it completely open. They did shut down, but eventually, faster than many others, did reopen. There were a bunch of red states that never locked down. Kristi Noem, for instance, they threw a parade for her. Mm-hmm. He was widely criticized for this, where he was saying, we need to protect our elders. We need to make sure that medical care is available for those people, and everyone else should be able to do whatever you want to do and protect your freedom. Now, this is the crazy thing. Joe has taken the bold step of laughing and telling people to vote Republican. He's often said he was a liberal. He's defended all of that. He's like, people call me right wing, but I'm a liberal. And he is. He's in favor of universal basic income. Now he's telling people to vote Republican.
But I feel like it's not even an endorsement of the Republican Party. I feel like the Overton window has shifted so far left that it's almost like a rejection and vote against the people that are going so far liberal. I don't think it's like, you know, a typical endorsement of.
So I can explain it pretty easily. Joe Rogan has bought into the right-wing lie that the Democratic Party has gone extreme left, that they are full-on postmodern neo-Marxist, or cultural Marxist, if you will, whichever one is further away from the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, so we can use it a lot more often. So he's bought into that, combined with the censorship problem. He firmly believes that censorship and free speech lies within social media and tech giants. So yeah, if there are people who are calling for certain creators to be deleted from tech companies, because ultimately, yeah, we don't have any control. None of us do. I don't have any say in whether or not Twitter decides to ban Andrew Tate, whether YouTube decides to ban Andrew Tate. But if they do, I'm certainly like, sweet, awesome, crab dance, that's good. Andrew Tate was a horrible human being who was profiting off the misery of young men and trying to turn them into misogynists and profit off them and make them more miserable and turn them into women haters. That's what he was doing. So yeah, it's good he can't do that anymore. But Joe Rogan firmly sees that, and people who agree with that as, oh, whoa, this is the left, they've gone too crazy, you know? I mean, it's weird. It's this whole trans agenda. If you step out of line, if you happen to speak out in turn, if you don't say exactly what you're supposed to say, if you don't always use the proper pronouns, if you don't do this, if you don't agree that it's fucking totally okay to give children gender-affirming care, even though we all know that is child abuse. See, and I don't agree with that. They've gone too far. So because of that, because they've gone too PC, I'm going to then tell my audience of 11 million people to vote for MAGA, to vote for the party that is effectively trying to legislate women's bodies and people who give birth, make sure that almost half the population doesn't have bodily autonomy, that is completely on board with actual censorship. We're talking about the censorship of books in libraries and schools, and making sure that those books are no longer available for people to learn from because they might have some scary ideas, you know, 1984 shit, Ministry of Truth shit, yeah, that kind of stuff. And also change language itself. Yes, doublespeak. You may have also heard that term. The very idea that all of a sudden gender cannot be talked about in schools at all, just at all, which is weird because you used to be able to say, hey, we have a boys' washroom and a girls' washroom, and then a washroom for anybody who needs to use it. You used to be able to say, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, but no, not anymore. We're actually going to upend language. We're going to remove the utility of the English language and just completely get rid of gender in schools. That's going to be the next phase. This is where we're going. This is the road. That's what he's okay with, which is just astonishing. Because I don't know if this is he turns off his brain, or he just has that cognitive dissonance, or this is just the worlds he exposes. I think it's the second one. I think this is the news and information that he exposes himself to. Look at who his guests are. Look who Joe Rogan talks to on a regular basis. Look at the sources he pulls up on a regular basis. A lot of it, like if you're reading the Daily Caller, if you're reading a lot of these outlets, yeah, this is the way you might start thinking about the world. This is how you might start seeing the world. You might start actually being like, well, you know what? It's the Democrats. The liberals, they are super pro censorship. Look at them. They're going after people's social media accounts, trying to cancel libs at TikTok, trying to say libs at TikTok is a stochastic terrorist just because she has 3 different hospitals, children's hospitals, getting death threats. What is this all about? Like they've gone out of control. No, it's too far, man. Too far. Yeah, they've gone way too PC. I'm MAGA. I'm going MAGA now.
The party as a whole.
Yeah, there was this graph that we showed a long time ago, where it's like where the political parties are, and they created this spectrum where it was economic left and right, and I think like social justice left and right. The Democrats were all extremely hyper concentrated in racial and economic socialist policy, and the Republicans were spread out away from the social justice stuff, but varying from socialist all the way to laissez-faire capitalist. Mm-hmm. That was crazy.
You gotta be careful about calling leftism liberalism as well, because there is an idea of like liberalism is you want to be free and open with ideas and let kids kind of explore the world.
Every time Moonlord opens his mouth, I'm like, oh, I'm here for this. What are you about to say? And then just 180s every single time. No. Liberalism, classical liberalism, is most likely that you believe in the democratic process, that the citizens of a country should have the ability to be able to vote, of which I agree with that aspect of classical liberalism. You also believe that the economic system that is going to be the most beneficial to society is going to be a capitalist one, because unlike its predecessor, where you had feudal lords and serfs, or you had kingdoms and monarchies, in this case, we no longer have monarchies, we no longer have masters and kings. We are going to have a system in which people can vote democratically, and everybody has the ability to own and sell capitalism. We're also going to add some other tenets into classical liberalism, such as you have the ability to have religious protection, you have religious freedom, you should be able to believe whatever you want to believe. These are kind of the tenets of liberalism. It isn't that kids should do whatever they want. It has nothing to do with that. It's about open and fair democracy. But that's where liberalism usually contradicts with things like, well, neoliberalism is where you introduce the idea that you should have unfettered free markets, because if there's any regulation on the markets, then that of course is going to restrict the ability for capitalism to work in the best possible sense, and it's going to, the lie you're told is going to hurt the buying power of people, where it's actually going to benefit the elite class, and has shown itself to do so. If you combine that with other elements, then we're going to be moving far into, like, if you want to add imperialism or war hawkishness, or you know, imperial ambitions, we can talk about neocons. You can talk about neocolonialism as well. But anyways, getting far off track here. That's liberalism. I'm not sure, but he was right in the opening that you should just differentiate the left from liberals, and that's usually because the economic system that is going to be the most beneficial to society, liberals identify it as capitalism, leftists identify it as something else. Like, why don't we evolve capitalism? Because yes, capitalism is better than feudalism. It's better than slavery. It's better than other prior systems, but we could do better. Why not have even more freedom? Why not evolve capitalism into something like socialism, so that people, where they spend 8 hours a day, have more power in their workplace, where you have more power and more deciding. You have a vote, almost like you have a vote in society. You have a vote in the workplace. You can vote in and out your superiors. You can vote in and out your upper management. You can have shares of your company, so you earn more and can decide whether or not you want to have healthcare, or decide whether or not collectively you want to have a better quality of life. It may not make as much profit, but we will also not have to fire half of our staff when things get hard, stuff like that. It's an evolution of it.
But sexualizing children is not, I don't think that's liberty. I don't think that that's doing justice to children. It can warp them in
Where
their
does this
later
come
years.
from?
This is I think on par with,
like, completely unprovoked. That just came out. Like, okay, if anyone is sexualizing children, I would say, broadly speaking, it's the right. That, like, overwhelmingly, child pageants, child brides, all this weird fucked up shit, that's child sexualization. Okay, that's what is that. Like, that's the definition of what it is.
what Majid Nawaz refers to as like up and down or something. Does he call it up and down?
I think so, like the axes.
Yeah, because like the he talks about how maybe he doesn't say up and down, but he talks about how religious zealotry is not left or right. It's something different. And if you've got people who have a cult ideology that doesn't really fit into any of these political political sections or segments, then we got to acknowledge that. It's not liberal, it's not left. Like Jacobin, for instance, they're socialists, they're leftists, but they're pro-free speech. They rag on the FBI all the time. They rag on the Democrats, and I'm like, okay.
Users on the far-right message board 4chan/poll tried to clog up the Trevor Project's hotline for LGBTQ youth, considering self-harm with fake cases to prevent people from accessing the hotline. I'm going to repeat what's going on here in case you're unaware. 4chan, in a poll, has got a strategy that is effectively working. The Trevor Project has a hotline for people who are LGBTQ plus youth from preventing them to commit suicide. It's a suicide hotline. They're now clogging it with fake cases to prevent people from accessing the hotline, thereby making it more dangerous for people who might be trying to commit suicide. This is the tactics that are being deployed right now.
Okay, cool. I can respect that, I guess. I don't agree with the socialism part, though.
So well, I think maybe
Rogan's, I mean, in the context of these statements, he's talking about the pandemic, right? He's talking about the way that COVID was handled. And I think a lot of people are just fed up and they see through just exactly everything at this point. I mean, take a look at Fauci's riding off into the sunset in December, apparently. They're shifting gears and shifting the simulation. Politico is putting out articles literally changing the narrative.
Oh, he was the Rittenhouse witness. I saw him in the RV with Alex Jones.
All the negative effects and all that will be blamed on President Trump coming forward. Dr. Birx is coming out and saying, oh, we knew the whole time they weren't effective.
Like, you didn't say that. Tell me why they're mad and why you think they're wrong to be mad. But that idea, I'm like, if that's what, I don't know if that quote is actually from her, it was a meme, right? But this idea is laughable that people would share it. Like, you've fallen for every major hoax that's happened. Every single one. If there's one thing that gives me that gives me hope, that keeps me white-pilled, and reassures me that we are on the correct side, is that we've not fallen for all of these hoaxes. Maybe once or twice we were like, hey, what's that all about? And then it comes out, we're like, oh, okay, that was.
What about the 49 state landslide, Tim? That one was kind of one of your own design. You created that one. I guess some people fell for it. Still are falling for it.
But the left and liberals, every single hoax, every time. And you know what it is?
What are you talking about? Like, the vast majority of people who were fooled, like ride or die Trump, they were QAnoners. It's got to be one of the most widespread conspiracy theories I've ever seen en masse adopted, especially for how wild it was. Secret cannibal pedophile cabal that has existed throughout time. They've been what the Illuminati was, and now the white savior has come along to save humanity. That happens to be Trump, to stop all those liberal Hollywood elites from the Wayfair cabinet, adrenochrome, that thing. Yeah.
I think a lot of it they wanted to fall for. They wanted Jussie Smollett's story to be true. It was great.
Right.
But it was just so glaringly obvious the dude was making up nonsense. Anybody with a brain. So at what?
That was really the liberals that ran with that one, though. I'm going to be honest. Like, when I first heard of it, I was like, that's disgusting and deplorable. Obviously, anyone who would commit a hate crime to that degree, and in the modern age, just especially like a prominent black celebrity, wow, that's terrible. And then it was like maybe a month or two later where a lot of people were like, oh, the details of this aren't really starting to check out. It's kind of looking a little bit sus. And then things became more and more sus. But if you are Tim Pool or Alex Jones, and all you do is talk about how racially motivated hate crimes are exaggerated, or they're a myth, or there are examples of false flag attacks and stuff like that, and then the one high profile instance of that happening, because you consistently say that, you then get to be like, well, I was right about this. I mean, come on. This is not confirmation bias. I know I talk about this all the time, how racially motivated hate crimes are kind of just exaggerated, broadly speaking, in society. But this one instance, come on, this is like the biggest one. Turns out he was lying. He set the whole thing up himself for the fame.
Point. Do the cult leaders lose that ability?
And also, it was the libs who were really buying into that one. That was like the resistance, who was like, oh my God, look at this. We have to go all into this one story and show like this one story demonstrates. Because like sometimes I worry libs hyper focus on stuff like that, where it's like, if this didn't happen or doesn't happen, then we've solved racism. Not we should improve the material conditions for, broadly speaking, all Black Americans, but more that if we can stop these specific instances of hate from happening, then the problem's over.
Convince ignorant people that these hoaxes are real. At what point do the masses just say, like, dude,
Capo Ray says, believe me, we as Black people know we're never gonna let that go. I mean, like, it's fucking, it's one of those things that's like, okay, you got one example. Yes, this was a weird case of someone who wanted fame so much under the system that they were willing to go to these extents and got caught. And because they got caught, everyone knows that they are laughingstock now. Like, that's it, the whole system worked the way you would want it to, right? This individual did not get away with doing a fake hate crime, and that's all there is to it. What more should there be?
You've lied every single time. I'm over it.
I have some friends on Facebook from Los Angeles back when I was doing a lot of theater. You consider them liberal, I guess. I don't know. But we were talking about the student loans and like, where's the money coming from? And some people like, I heard that it was going to be, they were just going to charge it off to the loan companies. I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm like, yo, look, Peter Ducey questions the spokes. What's her title?
Karine, the press secretary.
That's her. The press secretary. Where's the money coming from? She dodges the question 3 times in the interview.
I love how nobody knows her name.
And so when I know,
She's
I
so
can't even.
forgettable.
Karine Jean-Pierre?
Yeah.
Karine,
Karine
Jean-Pierre.
And I post the video to my friends in this liberal chat, wherever you were mostly, and everyone's just like silent in awe at realizing that they're snowballing the American people. They're going to end up charging people tax money to pay for their own loans ahead of time. So it's like an accelerated repayment to Sally Mae. Like, that's unconscionable, and I cannot imagine that'll pass. If Biden's proposing it, shoot it down, because that is not, you don't make us pay our own loans back early. That doesn't do anybody any justice.
Like, I don't understand like the rejection of like knowing how things are going to play out. Like
Okay, so they're not talking about this anymore. As always, they've moved on. But they are still, Joe Rogan is kind of still sitting himself into the camp of DeSantis. By the way, I agree that this should be a bigger story about DeSantis. I'm not sure why it's not being talked about. Ron DeSantis' first voter fraud bust is quickly imploding. The governor's own administration greenlighted the defendants' voter registration applications, and now it arrested them for voting. I kid you not. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made a spectacle out of the round of arrests made by his election police force earlier this month, jailing 20 people on charges of voter fraud and promising more persecutions to come. This is a right-wing talking point. They love talking about voter fraud. We care so much about election integrity. We have to make sure that Indigenous people, Black people, can never vote in any election because we care about the integrity of the elections, blah, blah, blah. At least one target was dragged to jail in his underwear by a SWAT team at 6 a.m. But it turns out that the individuals ensnared in DeSantis' dragnet had no idea that they could not lawfully vote. The governor's own appointees flubbed their legal duty to stop them from registering, and because of their sloppy errors, all 20 defendants may well be acquitted of the crimes they did not intend to commit. Almost kind of like entrapment. DeSantis' misadventure traces back to Amendment 4, the ballot initiative that was supposed to restore voting rights to most people who had completed sentences for felony convictions. Those convicted of murder and sex offenses were excluded. Floridians overwhelmingly approved the constitutional amendment in 2018, yet DeSantis and his fellow Republicans promptly sabotaged the amendment by enacting an unnavigatable, incomprehensible system for individuals who wish to regain the right to vote. The state refused to establish a coherent process for people convicted of felonies to learn that they are eligible to cast a ballot. Many Floridians of disqualified convictions, including defendants arrested this month, and therefore were unaware the Amendment 4 does not apply to them. After Donald Trump pushed the lie of mass voter fraud in 2020, Florida Republicans created an investigative unit to uncover election crimes. It was obvious that the office would continue to work for the GOP lawmakers. That began in the wake of Amendment 4, persecuting Floridians who made the honest mistake of voting despite a disqualifying conviction. That, of course, is exactly what happened. It appears that most, if not all, the 20 men and women arrested by DeSantis election police did not realize that they were not allowed to vote due to disqualifying convictions. They believe, in good faith, that they could exercise their civil rights, but they did not reach that conclusion on their own. As Politico Mac Dixon had reported, the defendants were told by the Florida officials that they were legally permitted to vote, and because they were believed that these officials, they now faced 5 years in prison for the crime of voter fraud. In affidavits and media interviews, defendants shared the same tragic story. They filled out a voter registration card. Their county elections and office approved it, telling them that they could vote. They cast a ballot in 2020, and now they are charged with felony offenses. But because local election officials approved each registration, DeSantis spokespeople have sought to blame them for failing to uncover for qualifying convictions. This accusation conveniently overlooks the crucial fact. Florida law tasks the state government with flagging felony convictions that bars a resident from registering to vote. It wasn't local officials who dropped the ball, it was the DeSantis administration. Like, that should be pretty massive news. I saw it on Slate, but I haven't seen it just like all over. And you would think that, like, you know, MSNBC would run with this kind of stuff. This is like their bread and butter. Here's how the process works. When the county supervisor of election receives a registered application, blah, 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 we don't care about it. Even if DeSantis was correct, shifting responsibility from the county supervisors will not absolve his appointees. 3 people charged with the voter fraud registered with the Broward County supervisor at elections. So, I mean, I think maybe the worst to come from this is he could just fire those appointees and then say, I wasn't directly responsible for this. But the fact that he was willing to brag about this, to get 20 people arrested and be like, they always claim that voter fraud is not real. They lie. Voter fraud is real. I have the proof. Here's 20 people arrested on it, and I am, you know, cracking down. No more voter fraud in my state. Voter fraud that I may have improperly encouraged.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demmel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.